Well, I want to welcome everyone to the annual meeting for Disaster Network of Assistance. And it's great to see the number of people that we have, and hopefully we'll be joined by quite a few more. I'm really excited from the standpoint of all the things that have occurred over the last year and the last 6 months in particular, and what lies ahead for DNA RAG. I think we're reaching out and becoming a global presence and able to assert some impact on a global level. There are 3 items that I would sort of consider on the consent. Instead of written minutes, we have a videotape on the website of all the annual meetings over the last 4 or 5 years. And so I would deem that to be the minutes of the last meeting. And if that is sufficient, next year what we would like to do is have sort of an executive summary of the meeting and the bullet points of the important things that we covered. And we're technically without a secretary within the RAG right now. We've got a temporary, but if you are concerned about it, you can see the full video, as I say, of the last several meetings. Second item that was circulated is a set of financial data. And Ira, can you just briefly cover that?
Sure can. So far this year, okay, for the year, we raised, where did it go? Only $16,000 this year. That doesn't seem right.
It's not. You left out the Nepal.
I know. I don't know how. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is. Well, I know that we received $300,000 from for Nepal, right?
331,000.
321.
331.
Yeah, and then and we're whittling it down. We're spending it, and at the end of May, even though our year ends June 30th, since we're having it now, May 31st, we had about $163,000 in cash left over, and most of it is restricted to certain programs.
If I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rusty, my understanding is we have roughly $20,000 in operating, which is accumulated by virtue of our dues, and the balance flows through our 501c3, and it is temporarily restricted. And
well, yeah, technically, the technical is 20,000 is unrestricted funds, and the rest is restricted to the program. It's all part of the same 501c, but one is restricted, temporary restricted, and unrestricted.
And the $300,000 that Phil was referring to was a contribution of stock.
Yeah, which we converted to cash right away.
To the maternal wing of a new hospital in Nepal. And that was sponsored through DNA RAG with the Australian Women's Group.
Yeah. And that's basically, yeah.
And the other aspect of the financials is up until this year, we have not really been sending due statements out. And since we acquired the computer program for iMembers, we are now able to send due statements out on a regular basis, and I think that will increase some of our reserves to use for administrative expenses.
Right. And the other thing is, with iMembers, we're hoping to have, go live in July 1, using it for the financials. We're gonna hopefully pull that off, right, Phil?
Yes, yes, sir.
So that if something happened to Rusty, AKA Ira, and or Phil, we wouldn't be reliant on a separate set of books. It would be within iMembers financial.
Correct.
So we're protecting that. Any general questions on finances or the minutes? Jeff, where are we in regard to membership at this point in time? I think Jeff's on.
I am on. Yep, we have 209 members currently, and we have 277 in total, meaning members and guests and others who would like to receive newsletters.
Moving on from that, Phil, board election.
Yeah, let's circle back on members. We also have access now through RI to lists of the district governors worldwide and district governors elect that we are able to communicate with as either newsletter recipients or friends of the organization. There are two other lists that are not as user friendly that are available through RI because of the way they're laid out. One is the DISCs, the District International Service Chairs, and the other is the Rotary District chairs. And the problem we have with those lists, the ones that we're able to use are broken down last name, first name, and separate columns. The two that we have a problem with, the last and first name are in the same cell, so we can't sort them the same way, and it really requires us then to manually load them up so that we can do that. And we just haven't gotten someone to do that for us yet. And I see Jimmy has his hand up.
Before I call on Jimmy, I would make a note that TNA RAG did send a letter prior to the Singapore convention outlining our booth, outlining who we were to each of the DGs and DGEs. So 1,000 letters went out. Jimmy?
You're muted, Jimmy.
Sorry, it's a simple request. Could everyone mute themselves? I'm getting feedback. I can hear people's TV in the background and things.
Thank you, Jimmy. Bob, you had asked about, let me go pull something up before, or Jeff, do you have that you sent me? I could pull it up if you don't,
Which one?
on the election results.
Let me see if I can grab it quickly.
Okay.
I just want to make a short comment on the ballot. And Jeff Brennan, who's been our webmaster and working on communication, developed the ballot. And I thought it was well presented with the bios and the photos. And it was the best one that I've seen to date, rather than just having the names and an opportunity to vote for that individual. But you, at the same time, you were able to look at the resume on each team. So appreciation goes to Jeff. Jeff?
Thank you. Bill, I'm still trying to pull it up.
I'm working on it too, Jeff. I can find it.
Let me just drop into another segment, and then when you get that, we can.
I've got it. I've got it.
Okay.
If I can pull it up. Okay, here we go. And share screen. Here we go. I think. This is the results of and the first 5 people are the people who were selected for the board. And the remaining people we're asking to serve, and Bob, I'll let you speak to that, but me, Jeff, Pubuda from Sri Lanka, Cecil, who's on the call, and Frank Bradshaw, who's on the call. And Bob, you want to address the remainder of the people, please?
Okay, over the course of the last year, we've been looking at trying to become truly global. And we realized the 15-member board cannot do it all on their own. We really need to respond to disasters regionally and then within the region. So we're trying to encourage individuals to consider the position of coordinator. And we had, when you looked at those bios, we had some exceptional people that were not selected to go on the board. And I'm saying that those who went on the board are pretty darn well qualified, but there were an awful lot that were left out, and we would love for them to consider the possibility of working as a team coordinator, region or national, and developing the team so that we can respond across the globe. And so I'm encouraging those who put forth their name to stay involved with DNA RAG, whether it's on a committee of the board or as a national or regional coordinator. When I see a hand up, Tim?
Unmute yourself, please, Tim.
I'm
You just remuted yourself.
now. You got me now?
You got it.
Hello from miserable, cold, wintry South Australia. When we talk about regions, are we looking at like national entities, or are we looking at areas like Rotary zones, or are we looking at, say, Australasia, South Pacific, Africa, South Asia, South America, North America, Eastern Europe, Western Europe? What exactly are we looking at in terms of that zonal or regional type structure?
Can I take a shot at that, Bob, for a second? Yeah, we recently, Tim, were contacted by some folks in Kenya that had some trouble flooding. And prior to that, we had decided to appoint, at the recommendation of one of our board members, a coordinator for Africa. And she is in Nigeria. And the folks in Kenya said, you know, Africa is bigger than all of North America. And one coordinator really doesn't make sense. And we're now looking at 5 coordinators, one for Northern Africa, one for Eastern Africa, and part of that is our ignorance of world geography, frankly. Okay. But one for North, one for East, one for West, one for Central, and one for Southern, because somebody said South Africa, and I said, that's a country, you know. But then if you look at South America, we look at Brazil, where there are 31 districts in Brazil, and we're trying to put a handle on, is that an appropriate region? We think so, okay? Number one, they're common with one language, and it's not Spanish, okay? So, because they speak Portuguese. So a lot of it has to do with cultural a lot of it has to do with risks. What risks are common to an area or a group of districts or zones? Last year, Mike Turlong and I, with Bob's very able assistance, and thank you, Frank and Dan, we put on a couple of webinars for zones 30 and 31, which run through the central part of the United States. That's kind of a region, okay? But within there, and believe me, they had tornadoes, floods, earthquakes, train derailments with poison, all kinds of stuff. I can't even begin to tell you the types of different disasters that they had in that one in that one group of areas.
Yeah.
Bob, can you add to that, please?
Yeah. The reason I asked is because it's a just trying to get the the geographical handle around it. Because I come from a country that in actual fact is bigger than the 48 states.
Yep.
My own Rotary district is actually about the size of Texas and Arkansas combined. I served for some years as the chairman of the board of Shelter Box Australia, and our responsibility was for what we classify as our Rotary Zone 8, which is all of South Australia, which is all of Australia, New Zealand, and most of the South Pacific, as far north as Samoa and as far east as French Polynesia. So if you're going to allocate regional, sort of representatives, you're going to have someone who's got a really, really good handle both on geography and demographics to sort of come up with the structure.
Yeah. Bob, and you're muted, Bob.
What we encountered, we had to move off what I would say the dime. We had to move forward. And the initial thought was we would adopt the regions that were developed for use by the cadre, the experts who go in and review projects and basically perform audit, et cetera. And they have roughly I think it's close to 500 members of the cadre in the different regions. So we said, okay, we'll go by this concept, but then we recognized that in some cases we had one nation involved, and in other areas we just wanted to start the process, and it's a process that's going to evolve over the course of time. But if you listen to the membership numbers, we only have like 250 active members, and when you're looking across the globe, what we need to do is find people who are willing to recruit new members, build teams, and work from there. Whether they in your area of the world, I'm familiar with ROCKS, which covers the entire country of Australia, I believe. And we've touched base with disaster aid, Australia. We've touched base with disaster aid for New Zealand, and you'll find that it's in Brazil. Yes, there are 31 districts, and we had a Zoom with all 31 district governors, the DNA RAG did, but for one reason or another, it never came together. But one of our members of our board, Enyo, happens to be the chair of disaster aid, and he could see that a new chapter for DNA RAG was not going to develop in Brazil. And basically his statement to me the other day, and they've had tremendous floods down there, 1.3 million displaced. He said disaster aid is structured in the same way that we were going to structure Rotary. And I said, well, what we need is, you don't need to reinvent and call it Rotary. we'll merely affiliate with Disaster Aid Brazil,
Hmm.
and we'll get the
Well,
same.
Yeah, well, the thing is, disaster aid in Australia, when disaster aid Australia was the founding of it, they've actually gone away from disaster relief, and all they now do is water projects. You mentioned RAWCS, Rotary Australia World Community Service. We have 5 regions to cover Australia, and each region has a coordinator, and we actually have standing disaster relief projects
Right.
in place, ready to go for flood or drought or bushfires. So everyone, I suppose, it takes it differently. I know disaster aid in America is very much involved in disaster relief, and I think disaster aid Canada, I'm not sure exactly, um, you know. What they're doing, but I know that they all those disaster aid entities all seem to tend to operate individually rather than like Shelterbox tends to operate on a global basis, which is the other big disaster relief organisation.
Yeah, Tim, I know, for example, and Arthur Hodge, who's on here, is in my district here in in central eastern Florida. He's on the board of Disaster Aid USA, and but they are really in the first response disaster business. We have in our district 2 now, Arthur, 2 trailers.
Yeah,
You're muted,
I know
bud.
Larry Agee was
Arthur, yeah,
In
Larry
our
Agee was
district, we
very
have
much
2.
involved in
yeah,
disaster response. Yeah.
yeah, and but in our state and the 8 districts in our state, we have something close to 15 trailers now, Arthur, I think.
We have 8, soon to be 12.
12 trailers that are deployed across the state, and, for example, last year when Hurricane Adelia hit, our trailers were deployed almost immediately. Before that, they had just gotten back to our district before they were deployed. They'd been over on the southwest coast of Florida for over a year, I guess. After Ivan, no, not Ivan. I forget. I lose track of. Unless they hit my house, I don't remember a whole lot of them. And Sheila, in response to your question, which I'm reading here on the sidebar, Michael, who's in District 7020, that district has 10 countries, and we operate, and I've worked with them since 2005, actually, on disaster preparedness and disaster relief. But they operate in conjunction with District 7030, which is another bunch of countries in the Southern Caribbean, and District 7000, which is Puerto Rico. But they operate, and we're trying not to be Caribbean centric, which has become much more obvious because we're working in Nepal, and we're working in Kenya, and we're working in Brazil. And we've got a new chapter in New Zealand that we're working with, but there are and I'm troubled with the word regions because that gets a little confused with the new direction that Rotary may or may not be going to replace districts and zones, but we're looking at concentrations of districts that make sense. And it might be national, it could be regional, it could be subcontinental or partial continent. And I think the real issue is what works, what makes sense, where risks are common, language may be common, and the ability for the districts to work together and pull together so that we can be more effective helping them. Because that's our job. Our job isn't to set stuff up, it's to work with the existing structure that Rotary has in place. Bob?
What we're trying to do is find people and communities that are willing to step forward and work around them and expand on those. And say in New Zealand, there is a disaster aid, which is willing to work with us, but the local Rotarians felt very strongly that they wanted to set their own chapter up. And that's what we're working on. When I talked with Enyo in regard to Brazil, he wanted to get the job done, and he considers that disaster aid in his country is the way to get it done. He was running into stumbling blocks through Rotary. He believes that he's beyond that. Alan from Taiwan has a very effective group organized in Taiwan already. And so it's not necessarily a new chapter for us, but it's linking up so that we can communicate what they're doing and experiencing with the rest of DNA RAG and the Rotary community. So it's going to vary from community to community, from area or region, and we're going to try and tailor it in. I'd like to just mention the different areas or individuals. We just appointed at our last board meeting an individual from Belgium and Luxembourg who stepped forward, and he's going to be a team leader, whether you call it coordinator, and that's on the national level. Then we've got Grace down in Africa, and we've got Saga in Southeast Asia. We've got Jason in Southeast Asia. We've got JP in the Philippines. We've got Arthur in Southeast US, and we've got Bill on Taiwan. And those are the ones that we have just received their communication that they are willing to serve as coordinators. They are going to go out and recruit the members and develop a team. And Phil mentioned that we were contacted, and over the last year, there is a New Zealand chapter, and that is a chapter of DNA RAG. And then we've developed partnerships or relationships with Team Rubicon and Nepal Disaster Aid, and Disaster Aid contacts in New Zealand, Australia, and the US. Just lay out a few. I mentioned that we sent out letters to all the DGs and DGEs, and it's on our agenda to get the discs and those Rotaract representatives into the mailing system so that we can communicate with them. It may be easier once we get that system set up to develop a working relationship with the disc rather than the DG or DGE. They've got all the other Rotary responsibilities, and the disc is the one who we really think may make the difference within the district. There were two areas over the course of the recent past where in Kenya, 400,000 have been displaced by the floods. And Michael was contacted originally, I believe. And Mike, do you want to just say briefly as to the status on our relationship between DNA RAG and the Kenyan Rotary District?
Sure. Thank you, Bob. We were contacted about 6 weeks ago by by a representative from another RAG, right, in Kenya, about the disaster there. As you know, the whole of East Africa, Kenya, part of Sudan, Tanzania, Uganda has had record flooding, and that followed actually on a record 5-year drought that immediately pursued it. And there was significant dislocation, about 500,000 people disrupted from where they live. But we were contacted by District 9212, which technically involves Kenya, parts of Eritrea, Southern Sudan, for assistance. We have had a number of meetings with their entire district leadership and about how DNA RAG could assist them in their efforts. They're also working along with nearby districts, 9213 Phil from Uganda and 9214 from Tanzania, who all have been affected by the flooding. We have welcomed their outreach and are mobilizing to help them in terms of they're going to determine how they respond as a district. By the way, the district governor of 9212, they really have a fine leadership team. We met with them, and they remind us, Bob, that in terms of Rotary Foundation reporting, and right, they're up there in the top of the world in terms of their transparency and accountability and reporting. Very, very good team, but we are working along with them. We are in the midst of now meeting with their incoming district leadership to better define how we work ahead. We have a draft memorandum of understanding between them of how we would work together, and that's being finalized. Thank you, Bob.
The other one, as I mentioned, is Brazil and Enyo, and Enyo's not on the call, but similar situation. And Enyo and I have been discussing things, and I think we are assisting them in our own way, even though it's labeled under disaster aid. It's definitely connected in with DNA RAG. Phil alluded to, and I think I pointed out, the $300,000 that the one individual contributed went into basically completing a new hospital or wing for maternal health care in Nepal. When I flip over into training, and I'm glad to see so many friendly faces from what I would deem the heart of America, which is the central area of the United States. But over the last year, we have been working with the sitting directors. There was a change. Elizabeth Yusevich and now Beth Stubbs as director requested that we establish a zone advisory directors disaster advisory committee. And Frank Bradshaw, do you want to just make a couple of comments? And Dan, you, and I think I saw a couple others from that area. Wayne, you've been active on it, but Frank, you want to give us an update on DNA RAG's involvement and where you guys are now?
Sure. Number one, we had great support from the zone directors, both the outgoing and the incoming, and it was their vision to set this up. We were able to recruit a very group of talented people who dealt boots on the ground with disasters, including hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, earthquakes, chemical spills, a little bit of everything. This group has been meeting every other week for almost a year now. But at the initial part of it, we tapped into DNA RAG, Bob, and great help from Michael and from Phil. And we got a lot of input, we got a lot of guidance, and it helped us develop an overall plan in that we've got a committee structure set up at the zone level, and then it goes down to the district level, and then goes down to the club level. It's a guide, it's a template. It's designed to be a living document. It's also designed to be tweaked based on each individual's district and zone's culture and the disaster that they may be faced with. We've got probably in the final draft at this point. We're probably within a month of getting it all wrapped up. We have shared it with DNA RAG, and it's my understanding it has been shared with a couple of other individuals, but we're hoping within the next month that Beth will be able to launch it throughout zones 30 and 31. But we're also hoping that this will become a guide for other zones throughout the Rotary world to use as a pattern to develop something very similar for themselves. Because disasters is not when, if it's going to happen, it's going to when it's going to happen. And one of our mottos and mantras has been, when the disaster hits, it's too late to start planning. You need to have planned way in advance. So we're hoping that this is the guide that will make that happen. Wayne's been great in working with us. Dan has brought a wealth of knowledge, having worked with Homeland Security and those kind of things. So we think it's going to be a great document once it's all finished, and it'll be out there for everyone we'll share it with everyone.
It is my understanding that that has been posted on the website, DNA website. And if you have a manual that you think is pretty good, if you could submit it to us, and then I don't think it hurts to have 3 or 4 examples, and they're gonna reflect the culture of the area you're from. In other words, Australia is going to be totally different than the United States. Nepal is totally different. And taking that into account, all we're doing is putting examples that you can look at and pull the best out for your specific area. But we need to learn from one another. As Frank said, this process for Heart of America was over a year. And it was an education for the incoming governors and future governors down the road, that we need to build the consistency. That you can't do it 1 year and then forget about it and come back right after another disaster hits. So I truly appreciate that and the efforts of everyone on that committee. I would also mention that when I asked them, the advisory committee, they all indicated that they would be willing to assist us in training others. So we're taking the load off of Phil and Michael, and we're saying, okay, we've got a whole new batch, an expanded team. And if you've got an idea that you can assist in that area, then let us know. Don't be hesitant in stepping up to the plate and saying, I think I can really make a difference in some of these things. That's what we're trying to do on the coordinators as well. I'm seeing a couple of people on Kishoff. You just returned from Singapore and you helped run the booth. Do you have any thoughts on that and where you are and where you think we are?
Say again, please.
You've just gotten back from the RI convention.
Right.
And you helped out in manning the booth and coordinating the booth. And I'm just curious as to what kind of reaction people were having to the booth and what we were doing, and if there's something we can do better next year.
So it all went all right, many Rotarians are very much interested in our group, and many visited, even past RI president, current directors, incoming director also visited our booth. So they have very positive notes, and about 6 joined our club, our groups, and about 11 Rotarians, they have filled the form, and they said they will pay online. So yeah, this is how it went. It all went all right.
Well, I want to extend our appreciation on behalf of the entire Rotary Action Group to you, and I think KK and Ranji and
David,
David Langworthy.
yeah.
And your wife too, Keshav.
Yeah. Really, I had, I don't know. I think you went through my email.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. The next group that I'd like to bring to the fore is because of the efforts of Jimmy, who's our communication man, and membership, sitting there in Scotland. He brought it to our attention that we really ought to get on board for webinars and reach out across the globe. And over the last month, you've seen communication on a series of sessions with content of preparedness. Are you ready? And I think that's important. We had 30 or thereabouts on the first session on Friday or on Saturday morning. Am I correct? Michael or Phil or Jimmy? And Barry Rassin was the individual who sort of gave us the charge. Phil, comments on the webinar?
I think I remember it. I was suffering mightily with COVID, but I think we did pretty well. We had about, Michael, what, 40 something people? 40?
Yes. You may have better fix on the numbers than me. I think about that.
Yeah.
Um,
And we're going to be doing the second iteration of the same webinar tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock Eastern time. The first one was really designed for North and South America from the Mid-Atlantic to the Mid-Pacific. The one tomorrow morning is really hopefully going to cover Europe and Africa. 8 o'clock in the morning here is noontime in Scotland, right, Jimmy? And
Correct.
So we figure we can cover a lot of that territory. And then the third one is on Thursday evening or Thursday night at 11 p.m. our time, which should not cause the people in India and Africa, India and Asia and Australia and New Zealand to be up at some ungodly hour to have to log on. Even Jeff Brennan gets a break on that one. Because I know tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, he'll probably be sleeping. At least I hope so. Because that's 5 a.m. his time. And I don't expect to see Jimmy at 11 p.m. my time on Thursday night, because that's 4 in the morning in Scotland. So, but we've tried to do this so we can hit as broad a geographic swath as we might with 3 sessions covering relatively the same material.
One real positive is not only were they getting good information, but there were a good number of those who attended who didn't belong or have any knowledge really of DNA RAG and this area, and we picked up 7 new members. And so that's a start. Our thought is that we will present perhaps 3 additional webinars structured in the same manner for more participation globally. But one of the questions will be, what should we address in those webinars? And if you've got thoughts on that, we're receptive. In other words, 2 months from now or 3 months from now, we ought to be doing another webinar so that we can reach people and cover topics such as partnerships. Who's out there in the arena? And we may have to do this based on the geographics In other words, the partners that we have here in the United States won't be the same as those partners that they have in Europe and Africa, or India, Nepal, Sri Lanka. Those are all going to be different, but everybody's going to be interested in it. And so that's part of the preparedness. You've got to establish those relationships in advance. So if you've got thoughts on the topics, or if you feel that you've got the background, and I'm looking down at Dan Flynn right now, those are the people that I would hope would step up to the plate and say, I'm willing to participate on a webinar, or I'm willing to participate as a coordinator. You've got to make the decision as to where you're most comfortable. And we want to honor those. Okay? On the communication, Jeff has been handling the website. And what I'd like to suggest is, if you have an interest in that, make it known to myself or Phil or Jeff, because we need backups. We need people to assist. And Jeff's been doing a tremendous job. And Jimmy's been on Facebook. And there are other social media. And we're bringing on board, is Annie on the
No,
on this side? We've got a young lady from Venezuela who is going to college in the States, and she's a member of Rotary, and she participated on the youth advisory, or Young Rotarians advisory committee for Jennifer Jones. And she's a ball of fire, and she's willing to help us as secretary and bring other Rotaractors or young Rotarians into play. But if you have friends or acquaintances that you think can benefit or assist us, don't be hesitant in suggesting that they attend the webinars, or step forward and let us know that they'd like to work on the website, Facebook, or other social media. We need that assistance. Phil?
yeah, we discovered this week, John Ebert, who had been doing a lot of work for us with social media, had stepped back because of some of his own physical limitations and some other things he was working on. Let us know this week that he, in fact, had still been signing people up as Facebook friends. We didn't know that. And he offered to jump in. I don't think he's ready physically to step back at the level he was, but he certainly was able to help us, and needs to be acknowledged for having done that. But as Bob said, if we can get backups Bob has said it very clearly. Right now, we are operating without a secretary. And because we're recording this, I could probably come up with some sort of minutes, if you will. But we need to have someone who is going to really act as a secretary. And with the electronic assistance we have with iMembers, that certainly will be helpful. So if anybody's got a heart for that, let us know, please.
I think a good portion of all this is letting our story be told. And one of the interesting things that I'm seeing through Heart of America, and Frank Bradshaw has been sharing emails with his entire committee, and I'm seeing, in response to just about every disaster that's hitting within the Heart of America, they seem to be willing to communicate. And that's because the story is getting out there that Frank and his committee are there to help. And we need to do the same thing. A 15-member board, 250 membership in DNA RAG. We need many more people to get involved. And I hope that if you've got a friend who's interested in this area and shares our passion, that you'll send that person to DNA RAG and the website and ask them to get involved. Another area, and we've been primarily over the last 5 years focused on preparation and training, communication on the website and Facebook, and assisting limited areas with use of our 501c3 ability to collect funds and distribute them at the direction of the local club, district, or zone. And for those who are outside the US, that 501c3 exemption allows those who are within the United States to get a tax exemption or tax deduction for making those contributions through the 501c3. Another area, and the board of Rotary International directed that all of the Rotary action groups must have a technical advisor from the cadre. If you look at WashRAT and you look at a couple of other of the Rotary action groups, they have separate committees structured to assist in reviewing and assisting clubs and districts and zones with global grant preparation and review. We should be doing the same thing. That's what I'm suggesting to our technical advisor, Tom, that we look at. If you've got someone who's a member of the cadre or who has expertise working with global grants, we'd like to know about it and get them involved so that they might assist in review of global grants. It's pretty easy to respond on the disaster response grants. Those are pretty straightforward, but we're there to assist if they need it. And I've been visiting with a couple of different districts because the district people don't know it. They don't have the background. So we need to be acquainted with those facts. But that should also be part of our program committee on an ongoing basis. That's basically where I'm at. I'm basically complete on my agenda. And we opened it up for questions as we went along, but now
let me ask the group if anyone on this call is a technical advisor. We would love to know who you are because we are not restricted to having only one technical advisor. We're required to have at least one. But if there's anybody on this call that's a technical advisor and is available or would love to be involved, we need to know about that. I see JP. Is that you, JP? Unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm a cadre.
You are in the cadre. Okay.
Yes.
And where are you located, JP?
Philippines.
I'm sorry?
Philippines.
Philippines. Okay.
He's our coordinator out there.
Okay. All right. That's right. That's right.
There was one other thing that I neglected to mention, and that is in regard to the coordinators. And what I would hope is we've got 7 coordinators that we've appointed through the board. Just as we're starting the webinar for our general membership and those who don't belong, I think we ought to do a Zoom for the coordinator, outlining the responsibilities and getting them all together so that they can discuss for themselves and we members of the board can assist in their moving forward. Because no one national or regional coordinator is going to be able to do it on their own. They have to recruit membership and they have to recruit a team to move forward. Bill? Question?
No, JP still has his hand up, but
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
we will be in touch with him. I think that if we hold such a meeting, we should probably also include a primer for those coordinators on the use of iMembers, which is really a very robust tool that allows us to communicate better with our membership.
Ashok, you're indicating that you're a member of the cadre, so I appreciate that.
Okay.
Other questions or comments?
Just wanted to inform them, Ashok Shrestha also is a cadre, and
Yeah,
he has a very good knowledge in the global grants.
right, good.
And he's now present in the meeting. He's now here in the meeting.
Yeah.
And sorry, I joined a little late. What is the status of this election of directors? Did you report that?
Bill, you want to cover that?
The election again? Yeah, hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got it up on my screen.
Do you have the results?
We went over this earlier, Keshav, but the top 5 people were selected as directors. So it's me, Jeff, Pabudu, Cecil, and Frank Bradshaw.
Okay. Congratulations, Bill.
Let me just mention, okay, leave the names up there for a minute.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Those who are not in the top 5, when you looked at the ballot, you saw their credentials, which are pretty darn incredible. And I would hope that those individuals, a good number of whom are on this call, we need to have them on board committees or working within the national or regional or teams on the coordination of setting up a system global. I truly encourage each of you to sort of lean back and think about where you can best serve. And if it's a coordinator, let us know. If it's working with training, whatever. But you have the skill sets to make a difference and truly make a difference to this Rotary action.
Yeah.
Thanks, Phil.
Bob, the one thing, just following up on comment that you made earlier today when we were talking, if there's, and you just mentioned it again, if there's someone who has a talent or a heart for working on training, Michael and I have done a substantial amount of training for a lot of different areas. We could certainly use help. Michael, your head's going to fall off. You're shaking up. Yeah, I mean, we don't mind doing it, but we would love to get some more talent to help us with that. So,
Bill, if there's anything I can help with, let me know.
thanks, Dan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Other questions or comments for the good of the organization? Well, I truly want to extend my appreciation to your being here. You're expressing your passion. And if there's anything that we can do to assist you in your local area, or if we can assist you in joining with us on a committee board or training or whatever, just let us know. Because we're all working towards the same ultimate goal in the family of Rotary. So my appreciation to each and every one of you on behalf of the entire board and on behalf of Rotary Action.
Bob, I have one more quick thing. I've identified everybody on the call except someone whose name is Disaster Aid USA in
That's my apologies. It's Bruce Schultz.
Okay. Oh, Bruce. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
No worries.
Glad to have you with us.
Thanks so much, Bob.
And we're right at an hour.
Yeah, you did good, Bob.
Once again, my appreciation and the best to each and every one of you. I really look forward to a successful year ahead. Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
I think it's just passed. Take
Thank
care.
you all.
Thank you,
Vote
guys,
thanks to the
ladies and
chair.
gentlemen.
Bye, everybody.
Good
Bye.
night.
Vote,
Cheers.
Hey, Kiki.
record the vote thanks to the chair.
Bye, Keisha.
Thanks, Bob.
We're at meeting. Bye-bye.
Good day.
No, bye bye from Nepal.
Have
Hey,
a
Shav,
good
have a
day.
good evening.
Have a good day, sir. Good morning. Is it good evening? Good morning now here.
Yeah, good morning to you. Good night, Truss. Have a good night.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.